participating in our second session of The Road Ahead, getting our events on track for who knows when, but we'll all be prepared. Last week's session was fantastic. If you missed out on it, Lasara just sent out an email this morning with the link to it, and I'll also set up a YouTube playlist with Mackay Tourism, so you'll be able to access it either site. Just like to thank Local Buying Foundation and Mackay Regional Council for supporting this series. They thought it was really important for, like our whole area, us, Isaac, Central Highlands, and of course Whitsunday. So that we can all help promote each other's events, all support each other's events, because that's what we're really going to need to do to make them successful. So I'd just like to begin by respectfully acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land which we meet today, the Yubarara people and the Yubarara people. I pay my respects to elders past and present and to the young emerging leaders. I would also like to extend my acknowledgement to all Aboriginal members of the Bira Gubba Nation. Okay, thank you everybody. Let's take it away, Krista.
Oh, awesome. Thanks, Chrissy. And thanks, Lasara too, and the team from Mackay Regional Council. And thank you to those of you who joined us last week. So last week, if you weren't here, we just covered a bit of an intro, what the program was going to be, and we talked about doing an action plan. And hopefully, if you did attend, you've done your one-page action plan, and that was really to look at what do we need to do as events in the next month, the next 3 months, the next 6 months. And it was really to just prioritise, knowing that life is a bit of a roller coaster at the moment. What I'm going to do is just ask everyone, if you don't mind, to turn off your videos. And at least you can leave your video on if you want, but definitely turn off your sound, so that if you do need to make an urgent call, or there's some homeschooling or some partners in the background who may not be as respectful as us in being quiet, we can all make sure we can't hear them and you don't have to be embarrassed. So yeah, so glad that everyone could join us this morning, and welcome especially to those who've travelled really far from the Central Highlands and up at Airlie Beach. It's great to have everyone in the region with us. Okay, so let's kick off. And last but not least, if you haven't already, just go into the Zoom group chat for those who've joined us late. And please let us know who you are, which organisation you're from, so we can make sure we email you the presentation out. And we will be actually recording this presentation. So make sure that you're comfortable with that, and then we can share it with you afterwards, so you can share it with your committee. Okay, so today's talking about dealing with a cancelled or postponed event. And if you're like me, since March the 13th, when the federal government announced that events of 500 or less would no longer be for the short term, and then no mass gatherings at all, I know in our business lost lots of zeros, and everyone we work with, from performers to stage people, even to volunteers, lost not only money, but I guess a bit of direction. So what I wanted to share with you today are just some learnings or things that we've had to deal with cancelling and postponing events. And we'll cover off, even if you have already postponed or cancelled, some hints. And if you haven't, hopefully you don't need to, but if you do, this session, I'm hoping, will really help you. So as we've mentioned today, this series is actually being organised through Mackay Tourism, and we've been able to bring it to you with the kind support of Mackay Regional Council, and also from the Local Buying Foundation. So thank you very much for your financial and I guess moral contribution towards this program, so that we can all learn from each other. Today we're doing our actually second webinar, which is the dealing and cancelling with postponed events. But what will be, there's quite a few in the next few months, or in the next few weeks, the next few weeks coming up. So please keep an eye out. Stu Spears is really interesting about sustainable events and sponsorship. So I'm dying to hear a sponsorship webinar. So there's the dates and times coming up. And at the end of this session, I'll go through these again. And I'd encourage you, if you haven't already, to fill out a survey that Lysara has done with Stu, just to get an idea about what our needs are as event organisers. Okay, so what we covered off today will be, when should we make the call about postponing or cancelling the event if you haven't already? Some communication tips before making the announcement. And even if you have made the announcement, hopefully these communication tips will still help. I'll touch on some refunds and ticketing and some dilemmas, but solutions for that, and obviously learning from other events. So whether you're dealing with a sporting, cultural, music, no matter what type of event we're in, we're all, unless you've got, if you have more than 10 people attending your event, we're all in the same boat. So I wanted to say that so that none of us are lonely in this. We are all across Australia and pretty much across the world, all going through this at the same time. And the best thing to do is share our knowledge and learn from each other. So please don't be afraid, even if you don't know each other now, but if you're online today and you get to see each other's faces or where everyone's from, please pick up the phone and give them a call. Because it's been a bit lonely out there, and I know that we all think, oh my gosh, how are we going to deal with this? The more heads we have working on something, the better. And being regional Queenslanders, even though I live in New South Wales now, if you scratch my skin, it's very maroon underneath. Make sure that we understand and we know that we have to deal with cyclones, with drought. We're used to this kind of crap, maybe not as big as this, but we've done it before. We are innovators. And I reckon regional Queensland and regional Australia is where we will lead the way, particularly for events. So if you haven't announced your event cancellation yet, which hopefully you don't need to, I want to talk about whether we should cancel, whether you postpone the event, or whether you do what a few of us who have events later in the year are doing, we're holding out. So a lot of us panicked, and I did with some events. We panicked at the beginning in March, and we pretty much cancelled within a few weeks. And thinking about how quickly the landscape is changing with opening up, I'm wondering whether we made the call too quick, particularly for events that aren't on till later in the year. So when should we make that call? And if you haven't made the call, just, I guess, try and stay calm. And it seems, I don't know about you, but life is an absolute roller coaster at the moment. One day I'm feeling confident, my own self, I'm back in my mojo. At other days, though, I feel like it's a roller coaster, I'm at the bottom, how do I get back up again? And when we're feeling like it's a roller coaster or a little bit stressed, sometimes it's hard to see the wood for the trees. And what I mean by that, sometimes it's hard to make a logical decision on what decision should we make about cancelling or postponing our event. I would cancel your event if you have no option, as in, like, and I'll run through, say, for Blues Fest or for other events that are on during, obviously, March, April, May, June, you have no option. You're not legally allowed to do it. So that's the decisions made for us. The other thing to think about is, what's the risk with your event? Where are you located? What type of event do you have? Have a think about, what does cancelling tell your customers, sponsors, staff and suppliers? So if you don't have to legally cancel yet, have a think about how long it might be to come back if you don't hold an event for a year or two. If you're able to postpone your event, I guess that would be a great thing to do. is that you could maybe perhaps look at having it the same time in the next year. I'll run through what you have to do and look at any refunds or ticketing to carry over. And the other option, if you've got a long lead time for your event in 2020, have a think about, could you possibly stage your event with smaller numbers, or could you look at other options of how to stage your event? And we'll be running through those options in one of the last sessions I do at the end of the month. But I wanted to touch base with it today to start thinking about, and you're probably already thinking like this, but say you have an event that runs over 5 days. Say you get, I don't know, 10,000 people at that event. Is there a way perhaps that you could limit numbers per day so that you might run the same program on each day so that people can, I guess, attend the event still, and you can cap your numbers? There are other options if you're an indoor event to look at outdoor options and what have you. And have a think about, if you haven't made your announcement, so let's start thinking logically about the type of information you'll need to make that decision. So there's just some thinking about cancelling, postponing, or holding out. And like I said, before you make an announcement, and I wish I'd thought about this because we panicked at one stage. We really panicked and cancelled a big event, which quite honestly, I don't think you'll be able to hold in August anyway, no matter how free the lockdowns were or the travel restrictions were lifted. I think it would be a very difficult event to hold. But we really rushed out. So the first thing, like I mentioned, is your legal, health and government regulations. Most of you already know what those are, but make sure you double check them. Don't get yourself in any legal issues. And one of those also is about, I hope people don't mind me using this sort of language, but about being cocky. So I don't know what you guys feel like, but when I keep saying, particularly before the travel restrictions were lifted when we were in full lockdown, when AFL was saying, we're going ahead no matter what, I just kind of started thinking, oh, I don't feel really comfortable with that. And how come they should be allowed to go ahead when we can't? So, and I'm seeing this morning on the news with cruise ships taking bookings for September. Just, yeah, it's very great to be confident and say, yes, we're definitely going ahead no matter what. But I'd just be careful in how you communicate that. Maybe I'm being oversensitive, but I find it a little bit cocky. And I think the type of language that you use, particularly on social media or in interviews, is, you know, we really want to go ahead. We're not on till November, or we're not on till or September. We're going to keep an eye out on the safest way we could possibly stage our event, and we will keep you posted on what's happening. So just try and think of language that you can use like that. If you haven't made an announcement, the other thing, of course, is to think about financials. What are you going to lose? What could be the latest time that you can make that announcement? So there's one event we work with in Miles. I hope they don't mind me sharing this info, but it's called Back to the Bush Festival. They only operate every 2 years, and unfortunately 2020 is when their event falls at the beginning of September. They really want to hold the event. They're just not sure. They're getting pressured every week to make an announcement. And I said to them, you don't have any interstate performers and you don't have any international performers. What's making you make that decision? And they said, oh, it's probably our community or our own uncertainty. We just need to know. And I said, what's the latest date you can make a decision? When do you need to make deposits to people? Contact all your suppliers and stakeholders and see when's the latest you could hold out for. And they mainly rely on a drive market within the 400 to 600k radius. So they could hold out to quite late, and they've worked out financially that they really don't need to make a decision until the end of June. And maybe their decision will be to cancel or postpone, but at least they're going through the logical stages of, okay, And they're also considering thoughts that they hadn't thought of is, could we have a local event? Could we just cap numbers at 500 or less? Could we spread it over many days? They normally have, for instance, a large grazing dinner on the Friday night, which is held in a massive hall with, I don't know, 1,000 people. They're starting to think now, well, what if we broke up that evening event and it's a pre-sale of tickets so that you could manage the numbers? What if we hold that event over 4 nights, up to 500 people at each night? Then we could sell 2,000 tickets. So there may be some other ways you can look at those financials. The other thing is, before you make an announcement, if you are a ticketed event, what's your ticketing policy? So what's your refund policy? Do you have that online written for the public to see? A lot of us have it on our actual tickets, but if you don't, make sure if you are a ticketed event that you somewhere very easily to find have your ticketing and refund policy public on your website, so that when you do make the announcements that you're either cancelling or whatever you're doing, that your policy that you normally have is really clear, so that you're not getting into arguments with people about wanting refunds if, for instance, your refund policy said, no, we don't do refunds. So just keep an eye out for that. And if it's online, if you do get social media inquiries, you can then just refer them to the link on your website. And last but not least, please make contact with your stakeholders before you cancel or postpone your event. And the reason you want to do that is there's nothing worse if you're a volunteer or someone working in an event. Maybe you're a performer, or maybe you're just the cleaner, but you depend on that income, that you read about it or hear it on Facebook rather than someone contacting you first about it. So they're just some 4 tips before you make an announcement, whether it be to cancel, postpone or hold out. Just keep those tips there. Here's, if you don't already know them, some links, and we'll send you Lasara and the team at Mackay Regional Council have a great page on their website that they've updating with these webinars and links to these presentations. So you'll get this presentation in PDF with these links, but it's got, just to help save you time, links to the Australian government's health guidelines, also the Queensland one. And I've also done a link for the Australian Health Government site with the actual advice for travellers. So that's got a breakdown for not just international travellers, but a link to every state. So, you know, for instance, say you do get competitors coming up from New South Wales, you can keep an eye on then what's happening with the other states as well. Tourism and Events Queensland also has an industry resources page with updates on the latest from the Queensland government. So those 4 links will give you a, I guess, keep you updated if you're like me and are a bit over listening to the negative news every day. So when I'm thinking about, okay, who do I need to communicate before we make our announcement, I literally whip out my map of Australia or Queensland or wherever my event is and think about who's my current target market, who do I need to communicate with. Have I made sure, oh, I forgot that I have a performer coming up from Grafton, I've got to ring them. The map just helps me visually think about who I need to communicate with. And I've just knocked off a quick table here for you. On the left-hand side, you'll see there just some areas of people to have a think about who you might communicate with. So I'm not sure, just on, I'll do some dots here like I did last week. So on your human resources side, the number 1 people to speak to before I even speak to any sponsors is to talk, obviously, to my board or the committee or my partners or whoever it is who makes decisions. If I do have staff, after I've discussed with the board and committee what do we need to do, I talk to the team. Not many of us have paid staff in our events, but if you do, I make sure they're the first people that are involved in this process, because they need to know how is this going to affect not only their job, but can they pay the mortgage next week? It's really personal, and that's why when you're cancelling or postponing an event, it may not be an income earner for you, but maybe it is for someone else. The other thing to think about is what contractors do you use? And don't just make it the big guys. Like I said, it affects the cleaner. It even affects the photographer. So one event that we've cancelled, we forgot to ring the photographer. We thought we'd contacted everyone, and he read about it first on Facebook and goes, oh, wow, I'm so valued. I had to read about it on Facebook. And I forgot that he's an event photographer. So he's got absolutely no work either. We were more concentrating on our competitors, our sponsors, and our performers, and forgot about, I guess, other contractors. So that's why it's not until now I've really understood even our graphic designers, who we don't employ full time, but if we added up all the work that we give them throughout the year, it's a lot of business for them. Even though they're only, I shouldn't say only because I'm a contractor, but have a think about who you're affecting. And even it might be the coffee shop or the petrol station that's located near your event will take a hard knock because you're not operating. Not to mention the tourism industry providers. The other people to think very carefully about are your volunteers. For many of them, the one, particularly in smaller and regional communities, it's your event that is their positive, I guess, mental health outbreak or something to look forward to in a year. So don't forget about them. Okay, so after you've contacted everyone internally, so please, even if you have made your announcement already and you haven't made a phone call to all of these people, just touch base with them now and just confirming with them. You don't need to apologize to them, but just say, hey, no doubt you've read that we've had to postpone, just letting you know what that means, what we're thinking about, what are your thoughts? And again, it's often those people who come up with some great ideas. The strategic partners, you really want to make sure you contact them before you make any announcement. So if you have funding or in-kind partnership with local council, make sure you contact your local council. Many of us use council grounds or venues. Government departments, so if you do get funding from Multicultural Affairs, Sport and Rec, Tourism and Events Queensland, we make sure that we contacted them. The reason being, for instance, if you are lucky enough to get tourism and events destination event funding, of the events we're working with now who do get funding, we've been requested to fill out a form about if you've postponed your event to 2021 and we had multi-year funding, we now have to ensure before June or by the end of May to let them know how much money we've already spent promoting the 2020 event to see if we can get part refund for those marketing funds that they had already committed to us. So don't think that you're automatically going to lose that whole grant. Just talk with your funding body. And the same thing with your naming or even your sponsors, or whether they be major, minor, cash, or even in-kind sponsors. For instance, if you have an in-kind media sponsor, could you ask them, look, of course we've postponed our event, could you help us communicate that? You're one of our in-kind media sponsors, could you help us do that? And there's a lot of things when you're doing promotion. I'll show you some with some examples coming up. If you're doing marketing, you can still absolutely provide your sponsors some wonderful opportunities together. Okay, let's have a think now. Who are other participants? Who else do we have to communicate with? Stall holders. Don't forget your stall holders, whether big markets, food, grog, whatever they are. Suppliers, like I've mentioned, it might be toilet paper suppliers, tent hire, whoever they may be, make sure that you've contacted them. They're part of all our teams. Obviously, we've talked about performers, competitors. All these people are in the same boat as us. They got no income. So the least we can do is keep them informed and work out ways to help us. One of those examples I work, or an Outback event called us about going virtual. And it was only because they had rung one of their suppliers who does their video news release. And that guy said, hey, have you thought about going virtual? We could broadcast you, you know, or broadcast from any of your performers across Australia. And they don't have technical expertise, these organisers. So just by talking to their suppliers, were able to see how they were able to go virtual. As I've mentioned, once you've contacted everyone, like I say, the more internal side of things, then you can start making your announcements to ticket holders. I try and actually contact our ticket holders internally first before we go publicly if you're a smaller event. That's if you've sold tickets to them. And then release to your local media, then regional, state and national. There may be what I call special interest event communities. So if you're in a particular sport or music genre, are there people you need to communicate with? And don't forget, obviously, your local community, because let's face it, over the next 6 to 12 months, they're going to be our main market. So if they're not already probably your bread and butter, they will be due to travel restrictions. Okay, so for those of you who've already sold tickets, like I've mentioned, just check your refund policy, check that if it's written online, consider your customers. The other thing to think about when I say consider your customers, understand that some of them, hopefully not many, but probably a lot, have lost their jobs. Hopefully it's not long term, but just remember that even if you have a no refund policy, what compassion, even though we're broke as well, but what compassion are we showing our customers who may have come to our event for the last 5 years, purchased tickets, and now we're saying, oh no, you can't have a refund, and they've actually lost their job, and maybe both parents of a family have lost work. So just try and use this time to show compassion if you can. And if you can, please offer a refund, even if it's a part refund, or at least transfer of your ticket to the next event. And there's some great examples of events that have offered for people to transfer their ticket to the next year, where, you know, over 50% or even the majority of some events are transferring them. If you can, if you're a smaller event and you've sold tickets, contact those the people who have tickets personally. So let's look at some bright ideas and learnings from other events. I'd like to spend the next half hour, because I find this the most interesting after doing our checklist. So after you've checklist that you've touched base with everyone you can think of before making the announcement, have a think about some bright ideas from other events. So sometimes, if you've had to already cancel your event when you have no choice, the communications need to be timely as possible. And when I say timely, if you know definitely there is no way that you can stage your event, like I said, because it was in late March, April or May, then you need to make it as quickly as possible. You need to make it personal, and you need to make that announcement from the top. So if you're an event organizer who actually has, I don't know, a president or someone who's really well respected, just make sure that you ask for them, for those comments to come from the top. The other thing to do is make your announcement as short and factual as possible, at the same time being heartfelt. So don't make it really long. Try, if it's on Facebook, to make it one paragraph, perhaps with a link to your website where you have the full media release. We don't need to be health and risk management absolute experts. I am definitely not a health expert. So I just say we are meeting the local, state, national health regulations as per detailed on their website. And I just add the links to those websites so that people, if they're asking questions, I just say, here's the advice from the state, or here's the advice from our council, or here's the advice from the National Health Department. Now is not the time for fluffy corporate crap. So don't make your announcements political. Don't make them too long and fluffy. Just make them to the point. What are you doing? Have compassionate. And all I want to know, if I've purchased a ticket to your event, or if I'm a performer, am I going to get a refund? So let's show very clearly, just some short, to the point, but heartfelt information, and will I get a refund? That's if you've had to cancel your event, or if you are looking at making a cancellation, just keep these things, I guess, in line and thinking about the future. Okay. So and those of you who were with us last week, I have used Bluesfest quite a lot in my examples, because I believe they've done it very well. I need to be upfront. I have nothing to do with Bluesfest. I can't take credit for any of this, but we had purchased tickets to this year. Of course, they were very, very good in how they've made their announcements. And if you haven't made your announcement, I'll just use these as some examples. So here we have an email, a direct email, so an EDM that went straight to all ticket holders. And it said, basically, they were pretty factual. Dear 2020 ticket holders, we're heartbroken to advise that the Bluesfest cannot proceed, as you are no doubt aware. And they've done it because issued by the Public Health Order of 2020, we are not able to proceed. Click here if you need more info. It's clear this is back when only events of over 500 were banned, and consequently, we just cannot proceed. They also went on to talk about just a line about their insurance, appreciating our patience, and they'd update us constantly, which they have, about ticket refunds. That is the email that went out. Again, short, precise, it's heartfelt, and they did say that they're heartbroken, but it was short and to the point, no fluffy or what I call political crap in there. Then on their Facebook page, they did exactly the same again, and making sure that that announcement comes from the top, because you want the most, I guess, the most respected person, or whoever the buck ends with, to make the announcement. So after they declared that it's not able to proceed, they did make an announcement of Festival Update that they were declaring that the 2021 event was on. They wanted to proceed. They were humbled by the outsourcing of love from everyone. So I thought that was a really nice how they worded that. And they talked about, there is a little bit of fluff here, but I didn't mind this one. And I just wanted to show you at the bottom there. So I'll just put on my spotlight again, or I might just do a little bit of a drawing. So what I wanted to show you is to look at the bottom here. There we go. I'll just highlight it a bit there. Across the bottom, they had a bit about all their sponsors. So as they would normally do promotion, they've included all their sponsors on all their communications. So again, that is a way to make sure that you're still giving benefit, whether you're Double J or Thrifty or whoever, Spotify, whoever your sponsors are still getting promoted. So as a, I guess, sponsorship deliverable, you are still delivering on what you're trying to deliver. So hopefully that's a way to keep on sponsors. Okay, the next correspondence Bluesfest did was to hope that we're all keeping safe and well. And then they're giving a ticket update. And then obviously with Easter coming up, they were also doing a video highlights of their music. So I thought that was really clever. And then they talk about how you could support them. So they were talking also about please consider right now that the entire live music instrument or entertainment industry is in trouble. So how can you support them? Okay, so that was an event that was cancelled straight up because they had to be. The next event I just wanted to share with you is the Mount Isa Rodeo. So they made an announcement pretty quickly by the end of March. They were pressured very heavily. The issues they have is that they're in a remote community. Even though there are 30,000 in that city, because of their remote location, and a lot of the shires around them actually shut to visitors so that they weren't able to run. And they did have a biosecurity issue because they have a lot of livestock as well. So again, what I'll do there is I've done links here so you can go to their media releases, and please feel free not to copy word for word, but maybe you might like to recycle some of the wording if it's applicable to your event. And this is an example of the wording that they used on social media. And they were saying that this is a big thing for them. They had been running for 61 years, and it's the first time in 61 years that they were cancelled. And you know what? It's an awful announcement to make, but it generated a lot of media coverage because it was breaking news that the Mount Isa Rodeo was cancelled, particularly in their regional and outback media and rural media as well. So this was a really interesting announcement, and one that I guess worked to our advantage, because by making a big announcement, putting out proper media releases, and because it does have a large following, this event, in its special interest sectors, it was a great way to generate publicity for the dates for 2021. And also, people started then commenting, going, oh, this is terrible. Please tell us that you're going on in 2021. Can we buy tickets yet for 2021? So it's been a really interesting learning from having to make a terrible announcement. What I want to do share with you, and I will have the announcement from the organisers hopefully for our next webinar, is that they, even though they've cancelled their event quite quickly, they have now sat back, and after contacting all their stakeholders, some of their stakeholders have come up with some online I guess, solutions of a way that they may be able to go ahead with a rodeo later this year. So I can't share you all the details yet because it's not public, but I will share them with you when we do our marketing and looking into the future of events. Because what they're looking at, if you
opening up the,
if everyone can just turn off their sound so that you can still talk and talk with each other about this, would be awesome. But this has been a really good learning of an event who, I guess, announced very quickly on the advice and push of their board, which, thinking back now, we kind of didn't need to make it that quickly. But in the end, it has worked for us. And please don't be afraid, even if you have cancelled your event, if you do come up with another solution to stage it, or stage maybe a mini version of your event later in the year, please don't write yourself off. Maybe there could be a way to do a special dinner or a special component of your event. Maybe make it, I don't know, a certain laneway event of a larger event, if that makes sense. Okay, so just to keep moving, here's another one which I really wanted to share with you. I've never heard of Bacon Fest before. And sorry to offend any vegetarians. My three sisters are horrified that I want to go to a bacon event, but I do love my meat. Anyway, I'm getting off the point. This was a classic. It came up on my Facebook feed. So number one, here's an event I found out is in Kingaroy in the South Burnett area. It's sort of in that area from, if you're in Mackay, to be southwest of you, I guess on your way to Toowoomba. So, but I just really want you guys, if you do have time, to take a look at their announcement. And they made, I guess, maybe not just fun of themselves, they did this breaking news video. It looks like they've done it in-house, but it is so clever. It was done on the 23rd of March. And this lady who I've never met, Krista Hauritz, who's the chief baconeer of Bacon Fest, when you click on the video, which I've done a link on their Facebook page to their announcement, she's washing her hands with the hand sanitizer and talking through why they couldn't go ahead. And when I won't let the cat out of the bag, but have a look at this video. It's not the funniest thing you'll ever see, but I thought it was so clever. It's so on brand. And I loved how they made their announcement, but they said for the public's health and safety is a priority for them. And according to expert advice, they don't want to spread the disease, so that they've cancelled the event. But they wanted to let everyone know that last year's event attracted this many people and injected nearly 600,000 into the local community. So they've used very short factual information, but they've also talked about looking at when life gets you down, there's nothing more comforting than the smell of sizzling beef. So they've even put out a cookbook and started with some cash flow initiatives. So again, I don't know these people, but just, yeah, round of applause for the way they dealt with it and really keeping to the essence. So we'll cover this in marketing later in one of the webinars, but really keeping to the essence and brand of who they are. Another event which I do work with is the Outback Queensland Masters. It's a very small golfing event which started last year, but it does have $1 million hole in one. So it is able to generate a lot of publicity. But what I learned from Golf Australia, so if you're a sporting event or even another event, again, who may not have made the announcement yet, do have a look on some of the wording. Golf Australia used the word reschedule. And I don't know why, but it really, I thought, sounded better than postponing. Because postponing sounded like I'm putting it off. But to me, rescheduling sounded more action orientated. And I thought, I love this one. So we're going to reschedule the event. So they made the announcement again near the end of March, which I think a lot of us did. Unfortunately, they work in areas of Outback Queensland that don't have an ICU. Some of the towns we work with don't really have much of a hospital apart from a few beds. So it's very important we don't introduce COVID into those communities. Anyway, long story short, we just talked, again, here's an example of a Facebook post if you need some words to think about, but we just said to all our friends, golfing fanatics and fans, with the travel restrictions, yada, yada, we've just means that we have to reschedule the event to 21. It's a decision we've delayed as we've investigated opportunities to stage the event. And we know that events are the lifeblood for many of the communities we work with. But there is a silver lining, and we're pleased to announce that the Outback Queensland Masters will be going ahead in 2021. Anyway, so long story short, we put the media release on the website, so if they want to read more info, they can. We made sure that we updated all the information we could. We also sent, before we did the Facebook post, an email direct to all our current ticket holders, because we had sold tickets already to this year's event. Because the event only holds up to 140 people per location, we did consider holding it later in the year, but again, the decision was made because of the fragile nature into the communities we stage it in. And also the other decision maker was that half of our customers and more than half who purchased tickets for 2020 were over 70 years of age. So that's a reason why we did make the decision early. We are targeting younger people into this event as well, but we just didn't want to expose, the risk was very high for the communities we're going to and our customers, hence why we've made the decision. But just quickly, here's an example of an email that went out about, and I hadn't learned to use the word reschedule, so I was still saying postpone, but I would now say reschedule to 2021. We then put the dates out as a date claimer for next year. Then we clearly articulated, if you had purchased a player, as in a competitor or spectator pass, no worries, you can transfer your ticket to 2021 or we can refund you. To do either, here's the email and what you have to do. At the same time, the lady who organises this event, because we'd only sold, I think, I don't know, it was less than 200 tickets, she actually rang every ticket holder to make sure they'd received the information in the email and to personally offer them a refund or a transfer. Now, by doing that, we've been able to secure over 50% of tickets being transferred to next year. So that means a bit of cash flow to help us cope with any fixed expenses. And it also meant that we were able to build that trust and rapport with customers. So just remember, if you can, don't forget that personal phone call. I know it sounds painful, but it really only took about 3 days for us to do it. It's impossible if you're a large event with thousands, but particularly if you've got competitors or people who are long-term competitors or participants, just make those calls. I just wanted to share with you another event of what happens when you're an event promoter and someone else cancels your event for you. This was a community where Boulia Shire, it's southwest of Mount Isa, the council announced the closure of their shire. This is even before any announcement of lockdown in the rest of Australia, because of the fragile issues they have in their community, a high Indigenous population. So their decision to close was absolutely correct. But they also cancelled all visitation and all events. Now, area is not a big area. They don't hold many events, but their biggest event is the Boulia Camel Races. And they put out this announcement before they even contacted their local organisers. So luckily we're not too precious and we understood what was happening. But if I'd been a private or I guess event organiser and a council just cancelled or closed their community before even ringing me, I'd be a bit pissed. Anyway, we picked up our socks and we said, look, totally understand. We've just got to get some positive messaging out there, because maybe the messaging from their council was not that positive about closing down. They were factual and they've done the right thing, but we wanted to have a bit of fun. We're a fun event. The people who come to our event love being very Aussie. They love the outback. So we made a bit of fun with it. We said, here's the latest news from Planet Boulia. We also announced it on the 1st of April to have a bit of fun with April Fool's Day. And we said, you know, there's been a hump in the road, but it's spurring Boulia Camel Races towards 2021. So then in the announcement, we said, we've hit a hump in the road due to the COVID-19 issues and also winter coming up. But we just wanted to know, if we can, we are doing everything we can to stage the event into July 2021. Luckily, we hadn't sold any tickets yet. And then we helped council by communicating to a lot of the grey nomads who go to this event and family market to say, please don't come and visit us this winter. Please stay at your home. We can't wait to welcome you into 21, but please don't come and visit this year. So, and the other hint here with this media release that went out, we used it again as a promotional opportunity to promote next year's event. And we also sent a link of high res images. So high resolution images for any print media and also low res images for digital media. So what it did is helped us get not only a story in local and regional media, but it helped get imagery of our event out. So we're trying always to turn a negative into a positive and use even bad news as positive publicity. Okay, if you're one of some of us who are holding off, so I'm just going to spend the next 5 minutes on what to do when you're holding off before we open for questions. If you haven't made your event announcement yet about whether you're definitely going ahead, cancelling, postponing, I mean, let's face it, none of us are experts. We're all becoming experts by living through this and learning what not to do, but none of us know what's going to happen. So if you do have an event later in the year, and my thoughts are, if you're financially able to do it and maybe stage your event in a different way, let's not make an announcement yet if you can hold off. Sometimes will be circumstances like in Boulia where we had no choice, and I'm glad they did make that announcement, but I just wish they'd contact us first. So consider, like I mentioned, holding. What's the latest that you can hold off making that announcement? As I've mentioned, the landscape is changing weekly, almost daily at the moment. Today, compared to yesterday where we live, we're allowed to go and sit in a cafe. It's only up to 10 people at one time, but where we live is only about 10,000 people. So we normally don't have that many people in cafes. So 10 people will fill up half our cafe. The landscape is changing. So like I've mentioned, what are your options? Could you stage your event differently with less people? Could you stage it with the same amount of people, but stage them over different days? Could you manage social distancing? This might be hard if you've got mosh pits, but maybe you just have to do it slightly differently. I've seen, I don't know if you saw that example from Denmark where they had an old outdoor movie theatre, and they've held a music event because you still had the radio system set up. So people parked at least 1.5 meters apart from each other, turned on their radios and watched the band perform live, and they could listen to them on radio. Now, we did have a joke about the mosh pit. Someone said that that's where you could do your wheelies and things like that. But there are all sorts of different ways to do stuff. Maybe you don't want to look at that stuff, that's your decision. But I've also seen a marathon, I think it was in Dubbo, where they are basically asking people to record their personal time on their watches, video it, and then look into uploading those videos with their times and seeing who comes first. So, and people are still paying to nominate to receive their shirt and also their competitor bib. So there are different ways to think about it. And I will hopefully have another solution for you on how you could do the impossible and stage a rodeo, even if we were still in lockdown. Okay, so please, if you are looking at holding off, make sure you join us for that session later in the month on taking your event into the future. Well, sorry, it's not later in the month, it's on the, what date is it here? The 2nd of June. Please join us for that, because I'd love to hear from you if you are staging your event in a different way, how we can do that. Pardon me. So just, oops, seem to have stalled. We're just going to go off. And guys, Chrissy, I'll just note that in 2 minutes' time, I'll be handing over to you guys to do our discussion. But I just wanted to run down with Miles back to the Bush Festival. I did touch on it already. They are planned to hold their event on the 10th to the 13th of September. They're getting pressures from within. They've got a widespread community organising team, some who just want to make a decision straight away to cancel because they think it's too risky. Others who just want to cancel or postpone it because then they'll know what to do. But it's only our uncertainty which is making us push to make the decision. And we're still putting lots of marketing out there to say, look, we're not sure what we're going to do, but here's some images from our last event just to keep you inspired. Please keep close, sign up for our e-newsletter and we'll keep you posted. Another good one, which I saw, I don't work with this event, but I saw come up on a Facebook post, was that this is a Camp Oven Festival which is being held or due to be held in October this year. So normally by now they do sell their tickets. I think they go on sale normally in early May. So they've let their ticket holders and their social media followers know that their campsite bookings and ticket sales will not be open in May, but they're hoping to continue holding the event. They don't want to go on to sale until they know what they're doing, and they just will want to keep everyone updated until they know what they're doing. And they've also, if you just have a look at this announcement, have let people know that they're going to make a more decisive update this year in early July, so that they've let people know we're not going on sale yet, we're going to make a decision in July, because they're hoping they'll have a better idea of what to do. And they will also be looking, like I've mentioned, at other ways to hold that event. Another event that's holding off that I've seen is the Jacaranda Festival in Grafton. They're not on till November. So they're doing the same thing. They're even still signing up sponsors and promoting their sponsors. They've been really upfront with their sponsors saying, hey, you know that we don't know whether we can go ahead, but we're going to do everything we possibly can to go ahead. Our jacarandas come into bloom. So just in summary, thinking about the road ahead, just when you are negotiating, and Stu will cover this off in a future webinar this month about sponsorship, can you continue to offer sponsorship even if you do cancel or postpone your event? Make sure before you make the announcement that if you have been secured grant funding for your 2020 event, and even if you're not going ahead, try and negotiate with your grant provider. Can they help you to cover the costs that you've already incurred, or help you to promote next year's event, or carry that funding over to next year? Have a think about what I've mentioned. Don't necessarily think we all have to deliver a virtual event, but like I mentioned last week, I loved the example, and I'll cover it again in marketing, about what Ellie Beach Music Festival did with their event, and holding some music over Easter and raising funds for their performers. I thought that was a great PR initiative, and it also made me respect their event more, even though I haven't been to the event. But it was just really good to watch, not quite it's a virtual event, but to listen to some of the musicians, and have a think about, like I mentioned, other options to deliver your event. Just a word of warning, everyone is saying pivot. I would say, yes, we can innovate our events, but don't be something you're not. Don't suddenly change. So when we look at creating an event into the future, just remember that life may never be exactly the same as what we've had it, but you never know, it might be too. So yes, now is the time to innovate, but don't be something that you're not. And just in closing, just a plug for these upcoming webinars. So next Tuesday, we've got the Fundamentals of Sustainable Events. If you haven't done the grant writing workshop with me earlier this year in Mackay, please join us for the grant writing workshop we've got next Friday. Then I can't wait to see this one with Stuart about sponsorship on the 26th of May. We'll then head into Friday fortnight doing event marketing. And this is one I'd love you to join us with and share what you're doing about taking your event into the future. That's going to be held on Tuesday, the 2nd of June, and then Friday, the last one, is our 3-step business plan. And again, there's the link to the council's website. So what I'm now going to do is, if you want to start turning your actual questions on, and also turn on, I'm just going to stop sharing for a minute. So stop share, and hopefully turn on all your videos and also your sound. So Chrissy,
Yeah, I'm just unmuting a few of those people who aren't unmuted yet.
well, I'm going to see if I can unmute everyone. I'm not sure if I can.
I'm just going through and doing them individually.
Okay, cool. If you do want to stay muted and we unmute you, just mute yourself again. You don't have to show us your faces, but I'd love, even if you haven't brushed your hair or put on your makeup today, would love to see you so that we can say g'day to everyone.
And also, if you've joined us during the webinar and you haven't put in the comments, if you're not sure where the chat is, if you hover down the bottom of the screen, you'll see a little, you'll see where chat's written. Just click on that and then pop in the comments your name and where you're from, just so that we just wanted to keep a little check of who came, to send out a really short survey so that yeah, we can find out what everybody thought of it. So I think probably the best thing now is to see who would like to ask some questions. Anyone?
Go on, Roy. I'm sure you're itching to ask a question.
Well, sorry, you drop me in all the time.
I did.
No, at the moment, we're obviously, we were one of those that cancelled right up front. And part of the reason was the health issue, but the other one was to do with sponsors. We are basically a sponsored event. We don't sell tickets. We don't have an income other than sponsors. So the decision was made that the sponsors are going to find it very hard in the current climate, and wouldn't be fair running around saying, hey, you know, give us a few $1,000s to run an event when they're struggling to even keep their doors open. So we made that decision, and we're still sort of thinking about 2021. It's a big thing. We had gone to biannual, and 2020 was to be our year, but I suppose part of the reason for my participating in this is to get some ideas and then go back to the committee, the small committee we do have, and just sort of flesh it out and just say, well, you know, if we are going to do it, what do we need to do? When do we need to do? But see, we draw people like kite flyers from interstate. You know, their borders are closed. We've got stock because we have the camel races. We have a few things that just don't go down too well at the moment. So, and unless we see once we see what really happens, then we can start making some assessments as to where we go. And I mean, a virtual coconut festival just wouldn't work. We could put some kite footage up and we might do that, but I mean, you can't have camel races. You can watch the camel races, but you can't get the sand between your toes and enjoy the atmosphere. So yeah, that's basically where we're at the moment, but obviously Roy, we want to stay connected.
Understand absolutely that you've had to make that decision, and like I said, we were the same for Boulia and Outback Queensland Masters. It's just a no-brainer. We just couldn't go ahead. Just when you are thinking about sponsors, and this is not to rebut what Roy has said, because definitely if you have small businesses and when you need to speak to your sponsors about what ability they have, but I just wanted to share with you, in some areas, and I don't know about Mackay, but in Mount Isa, for the rodeo, about of their major sponsors, so it's their biggest sponsors, are not suffering at the moment, touch wood. So don't assume, I know my industry is up shit creek without a paddle, cash wise. So there's no way, if you've got tourism sponsors, small businesses, hospitality sponsors, of course they're not going to be able to afford sponsorship. But there are some sectors of our economy that are not broke, and some sectors of our economy who actually want to continue sponsoring to help profile their industry or business. So just be aware of that, if that helps.
I'll give you an example, Krista. Some people would have heard me say this last week. So So with the Mackay Marina run, we went to all our sponsors early and told them what was happening. I actually personally rang everybody, and out of all our sponsors, and some of those are quite big sponsors, we had one $2,000 sponsor who was the only one who, and most of them had already paid, and the ones who hadn't paid actually paid a deposit after I told them, so that they would actually be able to get the 2021 sponsorship. You know, so some of those are like BMA, Daly Bay, and so it just might be who we're looking at differently. And I had an interesting conversation to Stu, who said, you know, there's people out there who are doing really quite well out of this, and he'll go through that more. So it's sort of almost not going to our same old sponsors that we normally go to, but seeing what industries are doing well. And the $2,000 sponsor that went off said, just make sure you keep us there for next year. I'm not sure of my cash flow. And we said, yep, sure. But, and some of them I know are struggling, but they don't want to lose their spot. Because if you become a race sponsor, we've only got like 5 of them, and people hold on to them really tightly because it's a fairly good price for what you get. So I basically said, you know, we are going to be rolling over till 2021. Do you want to be part of that? And then will you be continuing your sponsorship? So obviously they don't want anyone else to get their spot. So that was sort of like a good news story from that. It was a really pleasantly surprising one, but it was, yes, that phone call and how the phone call was worded.
One small business we work with in a very small town, I won't mention where, has said they've had a record, it's a hardware business, have had their best ever April.
Yeah, everyone turned into builders and gardeners.
No, I'm a builder.
Gardening.
Hey, Chrissy and Krista.
Hang on, I'm just going to put your video on, Butto. Hang on. Where is he?
Just while Chrissy's doing that, with the event I was talking about where the sponsors in Mount Isa most have come on, there's still quite a lot, particularly the minor ones who can't afford to at all. But what we're doing is even if they can't afford it, we will keep them on because they've supported, particularly the ones who've been with us for a long time. So.
Okay, there's Butto and Margie.
Hey guys.
Hi.
Hey, when we put in for our grant funding last year, everything's changed since then. Like our Battle of Bands that we run, and we had to can that. How's that going to affect our funding? Because we won't be able to deliver what we told them we originally thought we were going to do.
I'm really upfront with any grant provider or funding provider, and I just say, and they've been, touch wood, really understanding, because we've been the same. So I'll just share with you, like with Mount Isa, we've said we can't do a rodeo, and they said, of course you can't. And then we now have to submit a form about what expenses we've had to put out, and then another business case. With Boulia, I will share with the Boulia Camel Races, they were on a multi-year funding program with Tourism and Events Queensland. So again, they've said, of course, we're not going to give you the full funding amount because you're not going ahead this year. But you need to submit your invoices of what you've spent so far in promoting the 2020 event, and even the announcement of the cancellation all the time, yada, yada. But they'll only cover the money that the grant was applicable for. So they won't, because we got money for marketing for that fund, they won't pay for any admin or building or infrastructure money that we've spent, if that makes sense.
But I'll give you an example of what we did as the Marina run. So our funding from Tourism Events Queensland was based on just digital marketing to out of town. So I held off because it was at the beginning of March we were going to start it. So, but we spent, I don't know, $1,500 getting it all organised, another $1,000 on actually getting the videos done that we were going to send out. So is this Tourism and Events Queensland money you're talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah, so what I did was I rang Georgia. Do you know who do you have a particular contact with Tourism Events Queensland?
Yeah, we've spoken to her. Yeah.
Yeah, we've been in contact. Yeah.
Yeah, so there's a form that they would have sent you that you need to fill out before the 31st of May.
Oh, we haven't been approved yet.
You've not been approved.
It's the upcoming round, so yeah.
Okay.
I see what you
Sorry,
mean.
sorry, Butto. I thought it was money that you'd already secured. Just ring. So when was the closing date? Can you remember?
Well, we're supposed to find out any day now.
Yeah, you will find out any day now. I put an inquiry in for our Mackay ones as well. They would have reached out to all the councils or your local RTO for a reference check a couple of weeks ago. But yeah, I thought it was going to be this week. You would have found out.
Yeah.
So my advice is just be really, really upfront with them and keep in contact. Georgia, our contact, even though we already had the money, I just made sure that I just kept in contact with it. We were talking every week, a couple of times a week, when we were deciding what to do. Yeah, so I'd be doing that. Just make really good friends with them.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I probably, if the announcement's due to come out any day, I wouldn't contact them yet with your changes. Just when they contact you, if you are successful, ring them straight away then.
Yeah, good idea.
Yeah.
Cool. Because we want to do something. Obviously, we can't do what we normally do, but we still want to have a smaller event, or because the whole town's already booked out. No one's cancelled their accommodation yet.
Awesome.
So we'd rather put on something than nothing.
Yeah. You could I mean, depending what happens.
October, November, it would have been like, you know how the dates that I'd picked were kind of spread out? It was like a couple of days in October.
Sorry,
Oh.
Sorry, that's Leah. Leah, do you know
I'm so sorry, I didn't realise I was unmuted.
That's right.
I wasn't meaning to talk. Sorry, guys.
All right. Sorry, I was thinking, doesn't sound like Margie's voice, and I couldn't see it.
That wasn't moving.
Just quickly, I was just thinking, and guys, I haven't been to the event, but when I've met with you in the past, like a lot of your venues, apart from the big marquee, they're quite small. So depending on what, as long as those venues help pay for those events.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we've also got Great Barrier Reef Festival. That's first weekend of August, so that's luckily it is a tourism attracting event, but it's also community, and we can do a smaller scale event pretty easily, so we're very much holding off. But I think the best thing I've got from this, Krista, is the writing a press release, I guess, to update, even if you don't know what's happening, just write a press release. I think it's a good idea for both events.
And please don't be afraid. You're very welcome to use the Outback Queensland Masters or Booyah Camel Races. We write those ones, so please just adapt to your personality.
Yeah.
Don't be afraid to use the wording in those.
Yeah, excellent.
That'll save you $300 getting someone else to do it.
Yeah.
We pretty much do our own.
Yes, we do. Hey, Heather.
Hey.
Has anybody else got an event? Has anyone else got an event that they're not sure if they're going to cancel or not? No?
Yeah, so we do. We have our Farm to Fine dining event, which runs annually in Brisbane. The Farm to Fine dining event is an opportunity for us to showcase our region's produce to key investors, stakeholders. So we have been in contact with Blackbird just to check in with them and see how they're going and to offer our support. They're closed, as are most places in Brisbane. So it's going to be quite a while, I think, before we figure out whether that's going to go ahead or not. It is only for 80 people. It's a fairly it's a fairly closed group that we strategically invite every year. So the step 3 in that process that the government released potentially, you know, we could still hold it, but for us, it's more how, I guess, the venue is going and whether they're going to be reopened. I know a lot of them won't be reopening at all at this stage.
What date is it?
16th of July.
16 July.
Wow.
Running out of time there.
Yeah.
Just out of interest, there is a venue called City Cellar Door or something. And I'm not saying this will work for your event, but I thought it was a great example of, they normally have, it's like a wine bar with a restaurant. I've only seen it online, but they normally have lots of events where you pay $100. This is for the city slickers that go in, eat their dinner, and the winemaker comes in, explains the wine, and the chef talks about the paddock to plate experience. During lockup in around just the weeks before Easter and Easter, they were still running events, selling tickets that were $120 per person, and you had to book quite a few, I think it was 10 days in advance, where you had to live within a certain delivery area. But their winemaker was from Stanthorpe, and the winemaker did a dial-in on Facebook Live to talk to them, and they sent the 6-pack of different wines and delivered it to the people's addresses.
I saw that.
Yeah, that's cool.
For dinner, you could either, I can't remember, I'm not sure if it got delivered or you did a pickup as takeaway, and you could sit there and dine at home with these wines that are delivered to your door and get that. It was almost the same experience, but it was in your house. And I thought
cool.
that really opened my eyes quite early on to stuff I'd never even thought of, where we've thought about doing food events, even if we were still in full lockout, as long as we can do takeaway food and delivery to your door. It was really interesting.
Yeah, that's definitely something we could look at. There's no reason why we couldn't, if that, you know, if our venue does end up and running again. Thanks. Yeah, we'll look into that.
And potentially a different venue, hopefully not Kylie, but there's lots of venues that are going to be very open to suggestions to get business.
Kylie, Mackay Tourism did a Zoom to your room like networking event, because I had all this networking money that I needed to spend by the end of the year. And we were knowing our members were feeling very isolated. So we actually I must have gone to Dan Murphy's. That was when you could only buy 12 bottles of champagne at once. So I was like the Alco driving around Mackay. Should see how I'm just doing my credit card receipts now, and they're all Dan Murphy's in Liquorland. Anyway, we bought 106 bottles of Prosecco for our higher paying members. We got platted up platters for our, the like retail members and that. I just got like nice peanuts and stuff like that. So we got platted up to deliver. They were delivering to Yungala, to Barrow Crab, out to Kaylin, all around the place. And then we got another Amanda from Wake Park, who didn't have any work for her workers. We made sure that her deliveries didn't have to be kept cold. So she delivered the other half to all these places around. And we had a Zoom with like about 64 people on it, drinking their champagne, eating chips, bickies, whatever. They had a great time.
That's great. Yeah, we actually have a farewell happening at the end of next week, where if we weren't able to get together, that's exactly what we were going to be doing, is delivering packs and having a Friday afternoon farewell and send-off.
And we gave people who didn't have any work, which was probably one of the best things about it as well.
Yeah. Thank you.
Ian, what about your event?
Our event was actually scheduled for the beginning of July, so we held off until we had a committee meeting last week, and basically we were waiting to see what was going to happen with restrictions and that sort of thing. We've had to postpone our event when to, we don't really know yet, because we're still waiting for Mountain Bike Australia to decide what's the lay of the land sort of thing, with what size events we can hold. So they sort of suggested to us a date in September, which is like the outer limit for us to be able to hold a race in Mackay sort of thing before it starts getting too hot. Yeah. And it's a school holiday period too, so it's sort of the majority of the competitors that we were looking at getting were either coming from Victoria, New South Wales and Southeast Queensland. So it's sort of, even September to us doesn't really sound good, because the other consideration that we're looking at too is being able to get people here. At the moment, there's still only a handful of flights in and out of Mackay every day sort of thing. So trying to get seats on planes for people is almost impossible. The other thing what we're looking at doing is pushing the event into 2021, but still, because we had a UCI rating on our event, so a slightly international rating, there's no calendar for next year. The UCI is still cancelling events for this year, and they haven't even got around to releasing a prospective calendar for events for next year yet. So we don't even know if there's a World Cup next year, which is sort of, it's a trickle down thing from that level down to us on what slot we get to put our event in, whether it's like a slot in April or a slot in June, July, or a slot in September, because it's also an Olympic year. They don't know when the date for the Olympics is going to be yet, so it's just throw hands in the air.
What we'll do is we'll get you one of those mentoring sessions with either Stu or Krista. So they'll be able to, at least you'll have a bit of support then to help you work through all that and what messaging you should be putting out now. And so those mentoring sessions that we've got coming up, it sort of just covered the Mackay Isaac area as part of our, like the webinars was for everybody. The mentoring was just for those areas. That was sort of that was the amount of money we got. But if anybody's from out of those areas and you would like to have a session, just let us know and we'll see if we can fit you in, like Margie and Butto, you know, maybe we can free up a session. We'll see how many we've got, and we'll really try and help everybody with this. But I just need to know who would like it, and we can start that from now. That's what I think.
Ian, can I just quick, I don't know if we've got time, and you don't have to tell me now, could you still operate if only Queensland competitors came?
Possibly. It would reduce our numbers by about half.
Oh, okay.
So we'd go from around about the 200 competitor mark down to about 100. There is a big desire for racing of some sort, any sort at the moment. The other problem is, like, we can't even get into our trails at the moment because our local trails are all based on a property that's owned by Scouting Queensland, and because they've designated their property as a camping ground, camping grounds are still banned. So even with the restrictions getting eased this weekend, no one can go riding here because we've got no trails. We can't even get in there to maintain them. So basically there's been nothing done to them for the last few months.
Because I know, and we can talk offline about this, but I haven't got the form in front. Oh, actually I do. I don't know if you guys have printed that Queensland government thing with all the dates. So 10th of July is looking like a pretty big announcement date, or they'll announce stuff before the 10th of July. But I suspect by early or mid-July we'll have a much clearer, they're even talking about gatherings of up to 100 people being allowed, even interstate travel subject to what's happening in each state. And that's why I think, yeah, consideration if there was an just Queensland event.
Yeah,
But you're very right. There'll be a lot of pent-up demand for certain activities, and mountain biking will be one of them.
yeah, like one of the possibilities that originally we were looking at doing a webcast for our event, because most of our sponsorships dried up, sort of thing. It's sort of financially put a bit of a hold on that. But we've got a bit of a talk that we're sort of dealing with council at a pretty high level on some other funds that we've got from them for other things. But being able to not have spectators at our event, we're looking at the idea of possibly getting the top 20 riders in the country to be able to come to it, because they're itching for something to do. Ooh. And then doing the whole thing as a giant webcast, and that way people can see the racing and they can get active behind it as well too, sort of thing, without actually being there.
Oh my gosh, that would be spectacular. And I don't know if anyone else on this Zoom session, if you've seen some of the photos from Ian's events, like as a destination promoter, it is fantastic. I didn't even know you had landscapes like that in your region. Like I've seen the nice tourism shots, but not real event stuff. So that would be, oh my gosh, gobsmackingly exciting. And you could self-isolate them, couldn't you, for 2 weeks in a motel?
Yeah.
Like bring them up from Melbourne or whatever.
Well, that's the thing. That's why we're hoping sort of September puts us a bit outside of that interstate self-isolation thing. Like you said, there's an announcement coming in July, sort of thing, on how that relates. We know a fair few of the people that have already got airfares and that haven't cancelled their airfares.
Wow.
They were inquiring with us about probably almost a month ago about how the event was going. We said, look, at the moment we just don't know. We're waiting to find out, like everybody else. But look, July is odds on probably not going to happen. And they said, rightio, we can not cancel our airfares. We can just postpone them and we can hold them for a bit longer. So yeah, the old Virgin thing is also another thing that's thrown another big spanner into the works there too, sort of thing. Is a lot of people bought tickets on Virgin to get up here because they're relatively cheap, even though they're still flying in and out of Mackay. There's one flight a day in, one flight out, sort of thing. They're still operating at the moment. What happens in the next 6 weeks, whether they're still here or they're not here, we don't know really. So
yeah, interesting. Sarah, is there anything that you would like to add?
I was just going to say there was a bit of an offline conversation happening in the chat as well, just so others are aware, with some concerns around cramming everything into the remainder of the calendar year. Yep. Just working with the councils and your local RTOs, we're here to try and help avoid some of those clashes for the rest of this year and next year. Jocelyn's actually put in, because I know her microphone doesn't work, she's put in for surf lifesaving, nippers is a summer sport, but it may clash with other sporting groups pushing the season towards later in the year. So just make sure you touch base with us and we'll try and help.
It's a really good point, Sarah, because there's nothing worse than if you have an event, I don't know, normally in October, and you are able to go ahead, and then another event has just pushed you. Yeah. So please do make sure you contact Sarah and also Mackay Tourism to make sure that you're not, I guess, competing for the same markets and saturating the market.
Because I mean, it's going to be so important for everybody to get as many people as they can there, and if it is like a one-day event, maybe, you know, that's something that we can look at, having something on a Saturday, something on a Sunday. If people are coming from out of town, you know, they are coming in, and people will be just hanging out to do stuff. I know I am. Like our marina runs can't. Oh, the Gold Coast Marathon's not cancelled at the moment. They said May the 19th they're cancelling, and that's on the first weekend in July. I'm not quite sure what they're up to, but anyway,
You'd be surprised, some of these sporting groups, I guess people are so fanatical about their sport, they really will try and think of any innovative solution. It's some of those footy players are coming up to Queensland golf courses and isolating and training there.
There's a message here from Liz Crean, our Sports and Recreation Officer. She's just said, for Mackay Sport and Recreation groups, the Sport and Rec officers are contactable at sport@mackay.qld.gov.au. They are requesting updates for changes to seasons as they become known and are assisting in conversations between activities and codes to coordinate training and activity dates. As there are a lot that even have shared facilities, this is something we're very aware of. Please get in contact with them as well.
I think we just all have to communicate with dates and what we're doing, because it's just too important not to. And Lasara at the council is sort of all over this. She's, you know, just keeping an eye on it all, and we just all need to look after each other right now, I think.
Yeah.
Yep, for sure.
All right, well, just at the end, I'd just like to say again, thank you to Local Buying Foundation and Mackay Regional Council. The funding for this is just like being, and Mackay Tourism, we put in some money too, and to Lasara for helping me set all this up. But I just think from the last 2 sessions, we can just see how valuable this is. And I know there's a lot of other people who are watching because they can't actually do the times that we've chosen. Who knows what time to choose for a webinar? I don't. And yeah, so it's just a huge big thank you. I just think it's so valuable for our region, and a lot of other regions that are watching us do this, even down the southeast corner, they're going, oh my God, wow, you know, this is sensational. So yeah, let's put ourselves on the map.
Definitely, well done.
Thanks everyone, see you next time.
Thanks.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Might make it on time next time.
Come sit at the cafe with 9 other people.
Yeah.